Welcome along to this presentation on SharePoint to the Cloud from the Computer Information Agency. My name is Robert Crane, and if you have any questions about what you see here in this presentation, please feel free to contact me via director@ciaops.com. You'll find more information about me and my business at www.ciaops.com. Okay, so for the agenda for this presentation, we're going to have a look at some basic uses of SharePoint, different versions, and then we're going to home in on the Office 365 plans, look at some demos of the management and then some usage, and then talk about Office 15. So one of the starting points is if you're not familiar with SharePoint, this might be a bit of an interesting quote. Microsoft tells us that they're adding 20,000 SharePoint users per day, every day for the last 5 years. So this looks as though they're adding 7.3 million new SharePoint users every year, and that was back in 2011 before Office 365 had really started kicking on. So the other thing to remember in this these numbers here is the fact that this probably doesn't include the licenses or the usage of the free SharePoint product. So again, the expectation is that it's probably much higher than the numbers indicate here. So what typically is the usage of SharePoint? So as you can see, the majority of organizations use it for intranet, so basically for internal websites for sharing information. Obviously collaboration is part of that, so sharing all sorts of information directly via web pages. Document management comes next, then you've got forms and workflows and search. Now it's interesting to note here that only 14% use SharePoint as their public facing website, which they can do. However, the growth figure here that you should note is the fact that 63% have rated that as their highest priority for SharePoint investment in the next 3 years. So there's going to be a growing demand to present SharePoint to the world directly via the internet for a lot of businesses. Okay, so some good examples of some external websites that you can view directly on the internet. So have a look at obviously Ferrari.com, HawaiianAir.com, and also Starbucks.com. The advantage that running on a SharePoint platform gives these businesses is it gives them a common platform that they can use to communicate not only with the general public, anonymous users, but also linked into their internal users as well. So very handy platform on which to build all sorts of solutions. So let's have a look at a bit of a version refresher. So if you're looking at on-site SharePoint, typically what you're going to have is you're going to have either SharePoint Foundation 2010, which is a free download from Microsoft and can be installed on any Windows Server 2008 or better. The other option is SharePoint Server 2010. That comes in two flavors, a standard and an enterprise. The enterprise obviously giving you more functions and features. The important thing to remember is that the SharePoint Server version requires both server and client licensing. So you need a license for your SharePoint servers, and then you need a client license for every user who's going to access the SharePoint resources. So if we turn our attention to the cloud, again we have two similar options. We have some hosting providers that allow hosted SharePoint Foundation 2010. The two that I'd recommend you have a look at are myhostedsolution.com and also intermedia.net. Now, the hosting of SharePoint Server 2010, I think that probably the best option there is the Office 365 being from Microsoft. There are a few other providers who will do it for you, but I don't think there's anything as cost effective as the Office 365. So again, you can, as a small business, pay a small per month per user fee, and you can get access to the same enterprise versions with basically all the features that would be available to big businesses without the need to implement servers, SQL, all that sort of hassle. So again, there are your two version options, I believe, in the cloud. So we're going to concentrate here on the Office 365, but we probably need to have a look at what's the actual core differences between the Foundation and the server product. So the Foundation product is the core services, is the document management, the collaboration, the website, web parts, and also includes the Windows Workflow Foundation Runtime. So this allows you the automation of a lot of the processes in SharePoint. Now the server functionality actually is an add-on or builds on top of this, and again it provides these enterprise features such as social networking, BI tools, enterprise search, and content management. So that's what's provided there. So again, foundation first, and then the server components add on to that. So if you were to go with the free offering on site, you basically get exactly the same basic functionality as you get in the server version. The server version just provides you with an increased level of features and functionality. So let's have a look at the SharePoint that's available through Office 365. So at its very base, you can buy a SharePoint Plan 1. Okay, so this basically gives the users access to SharePoint only and just the base functionality of SharePoint. The next option is a standalone package, SharePoint Plan 2. Now this is the more advanced features of SharePoint. So this, for example, includes InfoPath services, Excel services, Access services, Visio services, and a whole lot more. So again, if you want the full functionality of SharePoint and you just want SharePoint licenses, you need to go with SharePoint Plan 2. Now one of the other technologies that Microsoft has built into SharePoint is the ability to view and potentially edit documents with something called Office Web Apps. Now importantly, every Office 365 SharePoint plan comes with the ability to view Office documents directly through SharePoint. If you want that ability to edit those documents in a browser, you'll need to purchase something that includes Office Web Apps. Now if you're looking for a standalone plan to do the Office Web Apps, so you get the ability to read and write documents in a browser as well as the base level SharePoint functionality, then you're looking at standalone Office Web Apps Plan 1. Unsurprisingly, there is an Office Web Apps Plan 2, which is exactly the same thing for reading and writing documents in a browser, but it also includes all the features and functionality of the high-end SharePoint Plan 2. So if you want the full functionality of browser, document read-write, plus InfoPath, Visio services, Excel services, you need to have a look at Office Web Apps Plan 2. Now, if we swing across and have a look at the suites, the first suite is the P1, the Small Business and Professional Suite. This includes SharePoint Plan 1, so the basic SharePoint plan, but also includes the additional Access Services component. So the Access Services component allows you to publish and access a Microsoft Access database into SharePoint and give it a nice web front end. Now, Access Services does have some limitations on what exactly can be included and not included and what functionality it has. However, for many basic level databases, it's a great option. So again, you can publish directly from Access Services into a P1 small business plan. Now if we look at the enterprise plans, there's 4 of those. We start off with E1, so the E1 includes the SharePoint Plan 1. So you'll notice that that's just the basic SharePoint plan. It doesn't include the ability to write documents in a web browser. For that you would need to go to the E2 plan, which gives you the base level SharePoint plus the read-write ability in the browser for Office documents. Probably the best value option is the E3 option, which gives you Office Web Apps Plan 2. So that includes the advanced version of SharePoint, all the features and functionality of SharePoint, plus the ability to read and write Office documents through a browser. The other important thing to note with E3 is that at that license level you also get access to Microsoft Office Professional Plus that you can download and put on your desktop. Now one component of Professional Plus is SharePoint Workspace. So at the moment SharePoint Workspace is the ability to take documents offline and work with them in an environment. So again, E3 is probably your best bet if you're really wanting to get into the full suite of SharePoint functionality. You'll also notice that there are some K licenses. These are the Kiosk Users. So the K1 gives you read-only access, and the K2 I believe gives you read-only access again in SharePoint, but the capability to fill out forms and use Office web apps to read and write documents, Office documents. Now, another thing that's available across all the plans is something called Partner External Access, or PAL licenses. All that you need to do basically is invite someone using an email address. They're then sent the information on what's required, how to set it up, and how to get access. You have to specifically assign that from your SharePoint site to give them rights. The maximum rights that these people can be is what's known as a contributor. That means that they can read and write documents, they can edit information, but they can't, for example, create new document libraries, they can't create subsites. So again, they're basically limited to contributing, but they can't do design style work. Excellent way to allow extranet users to come in and collaborate with you. So the P plan, if you've got a P plan, it supports up to 500 external access licenses, and if you have an E plan, it supports up to 10,000. Now, at the moment, these licenses are free. There's no cost to do that. They just need to be provisioned out of your SharePoint site. However, the caveat is at the moment that Microsoft does reserve the right to review and potentially charge for that in the future, so keep an eye on that. But at this point in time, the external access licenses, so these are licenses that don't require an Office 365 payment for access to SharePoint, are currently free. So here's a quick comparison. Some of this table does need to be updated, so we cut it and paste it from a bit of an old information. But as you can see, the main differences between SharePoint Plan 1 and SharePoint Plan 2 are revolved down here. So the enterprise features of form services, access of video services are not available in Plan 1. So again, important to note there are those basic differences between Plan 1 and Plan 2. You'll notice that the storage generally starts at 10 gigabytes, so you start with a 10 gigabyte base, and then you have the ability, you get 500 additional megabytes per user license. So every user you add gives you an extra 500 megabytes. So here's another table giving you an overview here, so it shows you who can access what. So obviously the Kiosk Users can access everything, and then the partner access licenses, external licenses, don't get access to my sites, neither do the kiosks, but Plan 1 and Plan 2 does. This shows you what enterprise features the different licenses can get access to. And again, you'll notice here for Kiosk Users, they get view only for K1 licenses, but they get view and edit for K2. And obviously SharePoint Plan 2, they get view and edit for everything. So the partner access licenses and the kiosk licenses don't add to the additional storage, while any other licenses adds 500 megabytes. So here's a bit more intense feature comparison, a bit of a sensory overload. So if you do want this slide deck or this information, you can obviously go to office365.com, or you can send me an email, director@ciaops.com, and I'll make that information available to you. But let's have a look here, and you'll see that on the small business plan, the P1, you'll see that you receive one public facing website. It doesn't support my sites, and it doesn't support the enterprise features, but it does have access to Microsoft Access Services. So again, that's the one additional feature it has. It gets the view and edit ability in Office web apps, and you'll notice here that you cannot buy any additional storage, and the maximum users on the P plan is limited to 50. So if we look, for example, as a comparison, the E1 and the E2, they still don't get the enterprise, all the enterprise features, but you'll notice that you can buy, you can get additional storage. Okay, so not only do you get 500 per user, but you also can buy additional level as well, and the support options are greater. So again, be very mindful of when you're purchasing the suites, exactly what SharePoint functionality is included with each option. So what we'll do now is we'll spin out into some demos. So we'll have a look firstly at the management of the SharePoint site. We'll have a look at modifying some existing components, creating some new sites, setting some options, and the differences between the management of the E and the P plans. And then we'll do a quick dive into just some of the basic features of SharePoint. Okay, so what I've done here is I've logged into my Microsoft Online portal as an administrator. We can see that by the additional admin link in the top up there. Now if we want to manage SharePoint, you'll notice in the middle under the Office 365 heading, under the heading SharePoint, you'll see a Manage Hyperlink. So if we click on that, that will now open a new window, and it will take us into our SharePoint management area. So remember, this is an Office 365 E3 tenant, so this is an enterprise tenant. You'll see here that I have a number of options working with InfoPath, user profiles, the term store, which are the advanced features, but we want to go into manage site collections. So we click that, and what we should see populated in a minute is a list of all our site collections. So again, because I have an enterprise tenant, you'll see that I have one public website. All right, so it's HTTP, not HTTPS. And you'll notice I have a number of internal or private SharePoint sites. So again, all the internal ones on the enterprise tenants are all HTTPS. So I want to work on any of these, I simply select it, and you'll see the ribbon bar up the top highlight. I can obviously delete. If I click on the properties, we'll get the properties of that tenant, including the URL, the storage that's in use, the quota, how much that I have available, and the resources that are in use. I can go into here and I can manage the administrators. So this allows me to set the site collection administrators for that site. So the site collection administrator basically has full rights over the site. I can manage the storage quota, the resources quota, and again the recycle bin is available if I need to delete something that was deleted here unintentionally. You'll also see that if I want to create a new site, I can simply go up to the new button here, and the only option that I have available at the moment is a private collection, because I have already configured my one external public facing website. At this point in time, each tenant, every SharePoint tenant, whether it's a P or an E, only allows a single external website. That single external website can be mapped to basically any URL that you desire. However, the internal ones are generally going to be your tenant name .sharepoint.com. So that's how they're going to start off. So again, for this point in time, the vanity domains aren't currently available on the intranet, on the internal site collections, but on the external ones you can certainly generally configure any URL that you want. So again, over on the left hand side we've got the InfoPath services, some more user profile information. So again, we can move between all of those. So what we'll do here is let's just quickly pop out and have a look at the SharePoint site. So if I click on the link there in the management, I'm now going to launch my default team site. Just give you a bit of a quick overview of what SharePoint is and what it can do. So what you'll see is SharePoint is basically a web page. There's a number of links down the left hand side. So for example, if I click in on shared documents, this is a list of documents. If I now click on the documents tab up the top, you'll see a familiar Office ribbon appear. I can now work with the property. So if I want to work on a single file, I can just click that file, and you'll notice that some of the buttons become active. You'll also notice as I go over the files on the right hand side of the file name there, you'll see a little pull down menu. If I pull that down, you can see I can do things like check in, check out. This document library has version history enabled, which means it keeps a copy of once a document is updated. So in this case I've got 3 versions in there, and I can roll back to those versions if I need. The tab up the top also allows me to work with my library. So for what I can do is email a link to someone to let them know how to get access to this library. So that's very handy when you want to stop sending attachments in email. Just put the document into a SharePoint library and send the link. I can also, for example, configure alerts. So what an alert is, it will send me an email basically when any information in this library changes. So that can be very handy to keep you up to date with what's going on. I've also got RSS feeds. As I mentioned before, I have the ability here to sync to SharePoint Workspace because I do have SharePoint Workspace installed on this device. This will allow me to work with these documents offline if I want. I can also connect it to Outlook, export it to Excel, and open in Windows Explorer if I want. So to get rid of the ribbon, I just click Browse. You'll see that I've got a number of different sites that I can view. At the home page here, you'll notice that I can also insert things like charts. If you go down here a bit further, you'll see that I have a KPI index here, and at the bottom here, here's an embedded spreadsheet using web services. So again, all those sort of features and functionality are built in. Now, if I click on a subsite here called Movies, Movies was basically a default Microsoft Access template that was published directly into SharePoint without any modifications. So here you can see I've taken the Access database and basically published it up, and it's given it a nice front end. All the buttons work. I can add records. I can click information. So again, a very quick and easy way to get Access databases into SharePoint and get them used for web operations. So again, all these are sub areas. What we can do, for example, is again, we can look at create a whole demo sub area. This, for example, has a getting started guide, which is a wiki, and you can see here that it basically functions like any website. Okay, so again, nice and easy to work with, easy to update. Makes it very handy, and we've got things like surveys, we've got wikis, we've got calendars, we've got tasks, we've got contacts, and again we can do things like in this case I've created a list of Office 365 pricing, so again breaks them all out by their different types. Again, makes it nice and easy to work with. So in a nutshell, that's SharePoint. Now, if we go up to the login here, I can go in and look at my site. So the My Site is an advanced functionality piece of SharePoint. Think of it like LinkedIn or a style of Facebook for the enterprise. What it allows you to do, for example, is to go in and provide a profile about yourself. So you can put like a status update. You can get information on what content you're working with, and you can also associate yourself with different memberships, different teams, and again you can receive updates on the information that changes based on those memberships. And then you can look at your news feed, so when you connect to other people you're able to see what they're doing. So again, you don't necessarily have to go into every single area. You can just follow certain individuals and see what they update if you're working together in a team. So look, that's a basic overview of the SharePoint functionality on an enterprise plan. So what we'll do now is we will sign out of this, and we'll sign into the P site, and we will just have a look at some of the differences there. Okay, so what I've done now is I've logged into an Office 365 P tenant, a small business and professionals tenant, and the first thing we'll notice that is there is no similar sort of SharePoint link here. It basically refers to it just as a website. So if I click to edit the website, what actually happens now is that I'm taken to the website, and I can now do updates. So you'll notice that a slightly different look and feel. Again, I don't have the same level of functionality, again because it's only the very basic SharePoint. There is a limit to what I can do, but importantly you will note that there's not much management that can be done here. So basically with the Office and Small Business P plan, you basically get one external site and you get one team site, and that's basically all that you get to work with. So again, it's important to note there are some major restrictions, there are some major differences around the P plan and the enterprise plans. Again, the P plan is made to be as simple as possible, aimed at end users who are small to medium businesses. A lot of the functionality, all the base functionality is there, all the collaboration, all the document libraries, you can add all those sort of things. But some of the things like My Sites, Excel services, Visio servers, you're not going to get unless you go to an enterprise plan. And it's important to remember there's no direct migration or upgrade from a P plan to an enterprise plan. So that's why it's very important to make sure that you select exactly the plan that will fit your requirements prior to signing up for Office 365. Okay, so if we now have a look at the new upcoming version of SharePoint 15 or Wave 15, some of the differences that will be with this product. The first one of these will be a marketplace. So like all products or software products these days, it needs to have its own little app store. So again, you can develop an app, a template or whatever, and put it into the store and sell it directly to the rest of the community. Another advantage, I think, is there's a new template called a community site. So you can create a sub-site that is based on this community template that allows people to contribute in forums, receive badges, have all sorts of ratings. Again, it's a far more interactive experience than the traditional team discussions that were in the existing version of SharePoint. You can also elect to follow any object, so you can go into a SharePoint site and you can choose an object, be it a file, a person, a list item or whatever, and you can follow that object and receive updates on that. So again, rather than having to try and track down an element that is changing, you can elect to follow that. You'll also notice now that we get a live document preview, so I don't have to click on a document to open it, or I don't have to open it in Office Web Apps. I can actually get a preview when I mouse over it. It also has improved workflows, so the workflow engine is much more powerful. I believe it includes things like loops and all that sort of stuff. So again, it's becoming a far more powerful language because Microsoft recognises that it's being driven more and more to automate businesses. It also supports the microblogging, so this is the Twitter style idea where you only need to make a very short status update. Again, keeping information flowing rather than pumping it through email. One of the big changes is SkyDrive Pro for offline storage. So what this means is that SharePoint Workspace is being deprecated, will no longer be available in the next version of Office. It will be moving to SkyDrive Pro, which basically creates a little area on your local machine and then uses that to sync information. And the other rumour is that we'll be getting direct anonymous access into our intranet site. So at the moment, obviously, the website has the ability to have anonymous access from the internet, but that may be possible also for the internal websites, the intranet site. So with all that said, let's pop out and have a look at the new version. Okay, so now we've logged into the new Office 365 preview area, and you'll see that this is the admin console, and again it looks very, very different, although the components underneath are very similar. So if we want to work on our SharePoint, administrate, we need to go to the admin in the top right here and select the SharePoint option. So this will then take us to an area that does look very familiar. It looks very familiar from the previous version. So again, we have a number of options down here. One of the additional options you'll notice is obviously BCS, which is Business Connectivity Services. You'll also notice that we have apps. So in this case, Microsoft refers to items added into SharePoint as apps rather than web parts or whatever. But you'll notice we get our site collections again. We get our public website, which is still HTTP, and the internal ones, which are HTTPS. So again, if I click on one of these and click on properties, you'll see in the Metro interface that this again looks very similar to what we saw before. So again, I've got my properties, I've got my owners and site collections, but we've also now got an additional sharing button here. So this again allows us to set up access for external users who accept sharing invitations and anonymous guest links. So again, this is what I alluded to when I talked about anonymous access here. So again, the sharing button over here is new. You'll also notice a bit further along that the upgrade button is new. So again, when the current version of Office 365 moves to this version, obviously the interface will change, but some people may not wish that to happen immediately, so you can choose the option here to upgrade the interface at a later point in time. But as you can see, most of it looks very similar to what it did before. So if we now pop in and actually have a look at the new website, what it actually looks like, you'll see that again this has had the new interface taken over it. So again, we look down the left hand side, we see that we get a similar quick launch menu, but we notice that again these are all active dots and active components. Again, documents, so if I click on documents, this is my document library. Again, much cleaner interface, I suppose, than it was before. Click on here, you'll see that in a minute I will get a preview of the document. So it's just got to load it for the first time. So again, now that I've gone over the document and clicked this, I'm getting a preview of this document through the new Office web app. So again, I don't need to open this document to view it. If I click on the open menu down here, you'll see that I get some very similar options to what I used to have in SharePoint, but again, I suppose it's in a little bit different arrangement. So similar, but a little bit different. So across the top here, you'll see that I've got my sites. Again, I've got the ability here to sync. Right, so if I want to sync a copy of this document library, I need to allow the content, and this is now setting up what we talked about with the SkyDrive Pro settings. So that will allow me to take some of this stuff offline. You'll notice across the top that I've still got the, if I click on files, you'll see that I've still got the ribbon interface, same with the library. Okay, so because I've got SharePoint Workspace on here, it's about to try and configure that for me, so I probably don't want to do that for the time being. So let me just cancel out of that and cancel out of the trial. You'll notice here that, as I was saying, the ribbon is basically the same, and what you will also notice is that what we have now by default is the what's known as a site notebook. So now every site template, the major templates, give you a OneNote document file for every site. So this can be a very handy way to add information, collaborate, think of it as a digital notebook. So if you haven't got into OneNote yet, I highly recommend that you have a look at it. Again, this is Office Web Apps, this is Office in a browser. The other thing that you'll notice here that is a little bit different is that we have a mailbox. Okay, so SharePoint sites now have a mailbox enabled, which means that this makes it much more powerful for collaboration than it used to. Again, how that is configured and how that works we won't be going into here, but again, you can see that this is linked into the Outlook web app. Okay, so a lot of the features are very similar. They're perhaps a little bit, their arrangement is a little bit different. Let me see if I can get back to, there's my site. So again, what I can do here, I can again, go to things, focus on the content. So you'll notice that when I click on focus on content, the quick launch menu on the left hand side disappears. Okay, so again, that can just focus on the content. The settings basically now I've moved from the left to the right. So here are my site settings. So for example, if I want to add an app, so again, I'm not adding a component, it'll list the apps. So for example, a document library is now considered an app. Task, wiki page, library, announcement. So again, all very similar items, but again, the idea here is that down the track you'll be able to add more and more apps from an app store. So that should improve the functionality and improve what's available. So again, if I click on the SharePoint store, let's have a look and see what goes in here. So you can get to the SharePoint store directly from SharePoint. So again, adding apps and doing those sort of things is quite easy. So that's a basic overview. Just a quick look at the Office 365 SharePoint 15, Wave 15. Similar, but maybe different in a way. So again, there are some changes coming down the track. So to just finish off here, let's look at some of the opportunities that SharePoint can provide a business or a reseller potentially. The very first one I think is search. A lot of businesses search for a lot of stuff outside their business using an internet browser, but how do they search their internal information? One of the great things about SharePoint is generally everything that is put into SharePoint is indexed and searchable. So that's not only the document names, that's also what's in the content. So again, a very powerful tool that many businesses have yet to explore. Automation, so many businesses are doing things the same way every time, but they're allowing mistakes to creep in, or people are overlooking things. Again, if we can automate these processes and let a machine do the work, once done it once, it generally tends to do it correctly every other time. So again, automation can save a lot of time when moving forms and doing approvals and those sort of things. So there are a lot of business processes that you'll probably find that can be automated, and SharePoint's a great tool for doing that. Another one is document control. So many businesses have multiple documents stored in multiple locations and in different attachments and different versions. It makes a lot of sense to use SharePoint as a single repository that everybody can get to, update, so when everybody's working on a file, they're always working on the latest version. And you can also incorporate advanced features like check-in, check-out, and approval. So again, very, very handy. As you mentioned initially at the beginning there is significant growth for businesses looking to use SharePoint as an external website. The reason is it gives them a common platform to build on. It's relatively easy to work with. It supports all the web standards, HTML, JavaScript, CSS. So again, if you've got a web design skills or you want to get to that level, that is made a lot easier, and you get a huge amount of additional functionality when you look at things like the document libraries and all those sort of management controls. Extranet, allowing external users to come into a website to pick up documents or to update a status or to do a report. Again, with the partner access licenses, they don't need to have an Office 365 license, so that means they can come in and update information and work with what's there without necessarily needing a license. So again, great for external third parties. So that about wraps it up. There's some references listed here, so some feature comparisons, features across the service plans, which is obviously always kept up to date, and again how to share the external site with users. So again, if you do want a copy of the slide deck, please don't hesitate to contact me. Again, my name is Robert Crane. My email address is director@ciaops.com. More information and more free items about SharePoint are available at my website, www.ciaops.com. And I appreciate any feedback or comments you might have on this video. Thank you very much for watching.